in Karachi. But the spat over Greenland is deepening tensions between the U.S. and the EU, with relations already fraught over the Ukraine war. It's added to concerns over the Trump administration's broader Europe strategy.
William Denselow filed this report for CNA from Brussels on what might be a more fractious year ahead for two of the world's oldest allies.
Allies don't always see eye to eye, but relations between the US and European Union have grown especially frosty over US President Donald Trump's desire to take control of Greenland. The semi-autonomous territory of Denmark is deemed by the White House as a matter of national security, with the administration citing concerns of a growing Russian and Chinese presence in the Arctic region. Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen says Washington has no right to annex its territory. A scenario once considered unimaginable, it's now drawn fears that the US poses a looming threat to a fellow NATO member.
Det her handler ikke kun om Grønland eller om kongeriget. Det handler om, at man ikke skal kunne ændre grænser med magt, at man ikke kan købe et andet folk. Og det handler om, at små lande ikke skal frygte store lande. Det er derfor, vi klart siger fra. Og det er derfor, at mange allierede gør det samme i Norden, i Europa og i resten af verden.
In its most recent national security strategy, the Trump administration stated that Europe remains strategically and culturally vital to the US, but suggested that the status quo could change. Washington warns that in the next few decades it's unclear whether certain European nations will be strong enough to remain as reliable allies. The US blames policies championed by the European Union for its current trajectory. Policies like the bloc's commitment to becoming climate neutral by 2050, which the White House rejected as disastrous ideologies that have so greatly harmed Europe, threaten the US and subsidise adversaries. The US also claims the EU has been weak on migration, resulting in what it claims to be a loss of identity and self-confidence. While the EU has taken steps to bolster its borders and its ability to remove people without a right to stay in Europe, senior officials here stress they won't succumb to political interference. But the bloc's defence stance has shifted substantially since Donald Trump became the US Commander-in-Chief again, holding firm on some requests and giving in on others. The EU has pledged to pump more than $900 billion into its defence sector, following US pressure for Europe to take primary responsibility for its own security, including that of Ukraine.
In Washington, there's a belief that if Europe is going to spend more, much of that will be spent on American equipment. That's clearly the preference. And in fact, it may be the reality, because for many things, the lead times are such that it's just not really practical for Europe to build those capabilities in a short time frame.
Some of these commitments were baked into a trade agreement brokered between the US and EU last summer. That deal, which is yet to be ratified by Brussels, put a 15% cap on US tariffs for most European exports. But the US maintains that the trade relationship, worth more than 40% of global GDP, is unfair, citing a trade deficit of around $147 billion, according to 2024's figures.
It doesn't protect the EU from further escalation, I think, in the future from the Trump administration. A conflict is foreseeable in the future, you never know. Again, the national security strategy is an illustration of an ever-increasing conflictuous relationship, I guess, between the EU and the US.
The US maintains that transatlantic trade remains a key pillar of the global economy. But clashes over issues such as Europe's regulation of big US tech companies to ensure fair competition and manage illegal and harmful content continue to fuel divisions. And as President Trump continues to push an America First agenda on both the security and economic fronts, trust between these long-standing allies is increasingly in short supply. For CNA, I'm William Denselow in Brussels.
The reaction